It's been a long time coming. I'm a little bit late to this one, but welcome to the complete battery comparison between the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus, Huawei Mate 30 Pro, and Google Pixel 4 XL. Man, these smartphone names are getting way too long. I've calibrated all the phones in terms of settings, screen brightness, and speaker volume, which is set to 50%, so time to unplug, and to kick things off, TikTok. I gotta say, it's not an app that I use, but a lot of people do, so as we're trying to simulate a normal usage case, it makes sense to have it here. Now, if we start with the battery specifications, things look great for Samsung. This new Ultra smartphone packs a 5000 mAh cell. We're talking top 5% of smartphones in terms of capacity, and that makes the three phones in the middle look pretty small, and the Pixel 4 XL on the end look tiny. As soon as we introduce the display specs though, you can see why this is going to be a really interesting comparison. While the Ultra does have the biggest battery, it's also got the largest display at 6.9 inches and the highest refresh rate at 120Hz. So if you didn't know, that means that the screen on that phone refreshes 120 times per second, which compares to 60, the kind of going standard for the three phones in the middle, and then the Pixel 4 on the end actually has a 90Hz panel. And speaking of the Pixel 4, on paper, things don't look too great for that phone. The smallest battery, tick. A high screen refresh rate, also tick. And on top of that, it ships with the highest default screen resolution, which is yet another drain on the battery. And with the Pixel 4 XL, unlike a lot of Android phones, you can't actually turn that resolution down, even if you wanted to. I say that, but if you take a look at the battery percentages of each phone, as of right now, there's some interesting stuff going on. The Pixel 4 XL is actually not at all in last place. It's the Galaxy S20 Ultra, that is, which might be a little surprising, but this could change over the course of the test. The other interesting thing going on here is, if you take a look at the iPhone 11 Pro Max, that is still on 99%. And to be honest, I don't buy it. I don't think it's at all possible that the S20 Ultra here has lost 13% of battery in the time that the iPhone has lost 1 or 2 as of now. What I would guess is that Apple has probably programmed the battery indicator to not fall as quickly towards the start, just so that it doesn't alarm people the second they pull their cable out. But of course, this won't affect the end result of this test, because when the battery's dead, it's dead. Also, last time I mentioned this, I promise, there is a giveaway running for a Galaxy S20 Ultra, so all the rules for that are in the description. Now, if you take a look at the bottom row of specifications under each phone, you can see the chipset each one's powered by, as well as the amount of RAM, and there's quite a disparity. I don't actually remember the last time I did a battery comparison like this, where all 5 phones are powered by a different chipset, but that's what we got going on right now. And it gives you an idea of just how many different factors there are when it comes to influencing battery life. Of course, battery capacity is one of them, but it's display, it's chipset, it's RAM, it's software. And I mention software in particular because people underestimate software and how much of a role it has on battery life. See, Samsung software has been okay. It's definitely improved a little bit over time, but it's nowhere near as aggressive when it comes to battery management as Apple's iOS or Huawei's MUI. What I mean by that is, historically, Huawei software has been quite quick to shut down applications you're done with, and perhaps snooze background processes. So this kind of stuff can lead to longer battery life, whereas Samsung software has traditionally tried to keep everything open. Anyways, not sure if you've been keeping track of the applications I've been running on all the phones, but now we're on the camera. So we were on photo, now we're going to video, and I'm recording 4K video continuously on all of them. This is one of the most demanding things you can do on a phone. It generates a lot of heat and puts strain on the memory because you've got to save big files quickly, and the chipset. It's not a surprise then that the numbers in terms of those battery percentages have been flying off, although you might be starting to notice a bit of a trend. You've got 2 phones at the top, the iPhone 11 Pro Max and the Huawei Mate 30 Pro. In kind of like a middle band, there's the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, and then right at the back, you've got the S20 Ultra with the Pixel 4 XL, although Samsung has now overtaken the Google, which is the result that I was expecting. One slight quirk you might have noticed if you're incredibly observant is that the Galaxy Note 10 Plus has bars of signal in its status bar. Now, it doesn't actually have a SIM card in, none of these phones do. I've been quite careful to make sure the settings are as similar as they can be, but Samsung's software just sometimes shows it. It's a weird glitch, although, now I think about it, you could be in for quite the surprise in a time of emergency. If you've also somehow been paying attention to the clock on the far right, you might have noticed we've passed the 4-hour mark. That's actually quite impressive considering even the Pixel 4 XL in last place is still on 40%. I always say on these tests, if a phone can last 5 continuous hours, that's good battery life. That's the kind of battery life that can generally get you through a day easily. If it can last 6 continuous hours, that's really good. 7, super impressive, and anything above that, well, we can get to it if we get to it. I should also address, you might have already noticed, that the Galaxy S20 Ultra I'm using is powered by the Exynos chip. That's the one we get here in the UK, but if you're in the US you'll have a Qualcomm powered variant, which will perform slightly differently on battery tests, but I don't imagine it would be a day and night difference. After all, the software is still the same, the battery capacity is still the same, and you still have that incredibly draining display on this phone. Between the iPhone and the Huawei, this is neck and neck, this is incredibly close, which is the exact same thing I noticed last time I compared those two phones, where it literally came down to the last few minutes that we saw a winner. And it's becoming quite clear in this test that those two phones are in a league of their own. To be fair, the Galaxy S20, I'm sure if you turned it down to a more normal screen refresh rate, 60Hz, like those two phones, it might even be class leading. But on balance, I think the question more people want answers to is, if I use this phone on 120Hz, will I still have good battery life? You've got to remember that these 120Hz panels, they're one of the biggest selling points of these Galaxy S20 phones. So if you're going to buy those phones and not use that high refresh rate, you're missing out a bit on what you're paying for. But to come back to that question, do you still get good battery life on 120Hz? The answer has become a very resounding yes. Taking a look at the clock on the right hand side, we're well past the 6-hour mark, and the Pixel has actually just died right now, which actually supports a lot of the articles I've seen recently that Pixel battery life has improved over the lifetime of the phone. See, when the Pixel 4 launched, those phones were slated for their battery life. Like, it was not pretty, but right now, having just performed over 6 hours 20, that's incredibly solid. That is comfortable to the point where I'd be happy recommending the Pixel 4 XL as a reliable battery phone. And the Ultra has called it a day too. There's 3 phones remaining, it's pretty clear which one's going first, but after that it's still fairly close between the iPhone and the Huawei, although in that time Huawei's gained about a 5% lead. Now, last time I compared these two phones, they were basically tied. In the end, the iPhone kind of edged it out by a few minutes, but it was close enough that it's perfectly possible that trend could be reversed, because we're running completely different applications this time round, and you've got to remember since launch, both phones have had a whole multitude of updates, and that can also improve battery life. Anyway, you've probably had enough of staring at slabs of glass and battery indicators, so what were the results? Well, in 5th place, Pixel 4 XL with 6 hours and 26 minutes. I've said this before, I'll say this again, I'm impressed. 4th was the S20 Ultra, and on one hand, yes, it's 4th place, but on the other hand, the time itself is fantastic, especially considering that this is with 120Hz mode on. Following this, the Galaxy Note 10 Plus with its psychedelic rear finish, 7 hours and 28, on a similar tier to the S20 Ultra, but remember, with a 60Hz display. And now, in 2nd place, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, leagues ahead, 8 hours and 28 minutes. This is pretty much one of the best battery lives you can get on a smartphone, and it's got fantastic standby life too. And that leaves Huawei with 8 hours and 46 minutes as the king of this battery comparison. Between this and the iPhone, they'll trade blows, so which one wins will depend slightly on how you use your phone, but both are absolutely phenomenal. And as a final takeaway, you can be rest assured that the S20 Ultra's battery life is really good too. And it could well be right at the top if you use 60Hz. With that being said, my name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.